Let's bring in our Africa correspondent, Yusra El-Bagir, who's in Johannesburg for us. And Yusra, what do you think this means from the South African perspective? I understand we're expected to hear from them in the next 10 minutes or so.
I mean, this case by South Africa was put forward to test the limits of this court. And today we saw that even though the court didn't take on the measures that South Africa had proposed, except the reporting measure, which is incredibly significant, it still refused to throw the case out of court, which was demanded by Israel. They wanted the case to be completely dismissed. Now, that is incredibly significant here because it actually materially presents evidence that South Africa sees as a case, a valid case for a genocide charge against Israel. And now this judgment will still not come for some time now, but the fact that they can continue to follow up on this, that this can actually be made on behalf of the Palestinian people, is incredibly important. Now, today we did hear Judge Joan Donoghue say that the Palestinians are a group of people that are protected under the Genocide Convention. And I think that this, in light of the dehumanizing statements read out by South African lawyers that had been said by Israeli officials, is really quite important for the world to hear that Palestinians deserve to be protected. And the horrific images we've seen come out of Gaza of children being killed and civilians being hurt are actually unacceptable. So I think this is obviously an ongoing case, but this moment is incredibly historic. We did hear from Ramallah and the West Bank, the occupied Palestinian territories. People feel a lot of gratitude towards South Africa. They said that although there's been support from all over the world for the Palestinian cause, they felt that this was tangible, that this actually could give them some dignity, some humanity in the light of the global audience. Again, we will wait and see what happens. People here have been protesting against what they've called a genocide for months, and whether or not the judge rules that it's a genocide, they'll continue to do so.
Yusra, thanks so much for that take. Ali Bunkall for us in Jerusalem. Ali, what is your perspective? What will be the perspective of Israeli leaders?
Well, I think the vast majority of what we heard, 35 minutes of it, was incredibly uncomfortable for Israel as the leading judge there, the American judge, went through bit by bit some of the evidence presented to the court, and also a lot of the testimony from international bodies relating to how dire the conditions are in Gaza now and the conduct of Israel and the Israeli military. It did not go Israel's way for the most part, and they had already greeted South Africa's claims with, frankly, disgust and shock here. The very idea that Israel, the state that was born out of the greatest genocide in living memory, the Holocaust, incidentally being remembered on International Holocaust Day tomorrow. Well, the very fact that they were being potentially accused of genocide is utterly anathema here, and yet, you know, that will continue, and that will sit incredibly uncomfortably with many Israelis. But, and I think this is quite a significant but in the way the Israelis will respond to this, as and when they do, ultimately the court didn't order Israel to stop its military action immediately, and it didn't order the Israeli Defense Forces to withdraw from Gaza. And so I think that is probably the way the government here and Benjamin Netanyahu will spin it. I think they will say that many of the things they've been ordered to do, like stopping anyone inciting genocide, and I mean that probably is a reference to some of the far-right ministers, in particular the likes of Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir. Well, I think the main government of Benjamin Netanyahu can probably say, you know, we are taking steps to make sure that doesn't happen. They will, as they have done over recent weeks, say that they are taking steps to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza, but when it gets into Gaza, it's not being distributed very effectively, so it's not our fault that it's not getting to Palestinians. But ultimately, in the view of the court, it can continue fighting the war, but it has to do so with serious conditions imposed on its conduct. And there was one other bit that I noted in that. Hamas had said in the lead up to today's decision that they would abide by and respect any decision made by the ICJ. Insofar, whether or not we can trust Hamas at all, the ICJ did call for an immediate and unconditional release of the hostages. So, if Hamas were to be true to its word, and I don't think many people believe they would be, but if they were to remain true to their word, then the ICJ has asked that the hostages be released.
Ali Bunkall and Yusra El-Bagir, thanks so much both for that. So just to sum up what we have heard in the last hour, the International Court of Justice has imposed measures on Israel to try and reduce the risk of genocide being committed.